Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Desi Powerhub podcast. Today's episode is gonna be about consistency and how you can stick to your goals. So the way I think about it is that consistency is the only thing that separates a dreamer from the person who's actually living that dream. It's the only thing that can make a mere thought materialize into something that's actually part of your reality. Isn't that pretty cool? And it's what links our goals to our achievements and makes these ideas or these wishes come to life. But what happens if we can't be consistent? Well, we're left with nothing but empty promises and unfinished projects. This will definitely make us feel bad about ourselves and make others lose trust in us. It's like starting something with the excitement but then giving up halfway through. You keep on trying, you put in the work at least halfway, but all that effort, it amounts to nothing. So you're left with nothing to show for anything that you were dreaming about or anything you wanted to do. And we've seen that when we are consistent, how much we can benefit from it. Like in our relationships, people can expect things from us. So we build trust and reliability. It also creates like a stable environment for growth, because if you keep on chipping at it, you will eventually end up going through, right? So it also affects our workspace, where consistency allows us to be seen as a more reliable and professional person because we do what we say we're gonna do, and it ensures that there's steady progress and achievement of our goals. They may be personal, they may be professional, they may be spiritual, or even just in a relationship. Right? The cons may be that if you're not consistent, people will definitely stop taking you seriously. You stop taking yourself seriously, and it also definitely reflects a lack of discipline. So now that we know how much we can benefit from consistency and what the cons or what the repercussions of not being consistent may be, why are we not consistent? Well, I honestly believe that you should be spontaneous and learn a lot of things and try to do a lot of different things, but then taking those initial hobbies and turning them into something you can be proud of. Now that's a major feat that I'm starting to get into, because I had the shiny object syndrome where I love trying different things. I love jumping into other things. But then what happens to all the things that you picked up beforehand? They get left behind, and in the end you can only say, yeah, I've tried that once or twice, or yeah, I'm like very beginner, mediocre level at that, but you can't really say that you're proficient at anything. And not that you have to, but it's also nice to have some hobbies or some skills or some goals that you're constantly working towards and see results from. So the first reason is you need to fix your mindset. You may not be believing in yourself because you've lost hope in yourself. To understand this scenario, imagine that you're with a friend and you guys plan to meet up at the gym every day at 7 p.m., right? You show up at 7 p.m. and your friend's not there. He tells you he's going to be there the next day. You show up again and he's not there again. And the third day goes by, the fourth day goes by, and he never shows up. On the fifth day, he's like, yeah, I'll definitely be here, be at the gym at this time. It's okay, I'll meet you there. But at this point, you've kind of lost trust in him, and you know that he's not going to show up. So this analogy is not of a friend but of yourself. If you keep on making promises to yourself but never follow through, you're going to end up losing trust in your own self. And not just you, but no one else will take you seriously anymore. If you're like, yeah, definitely, let's meet up, or let's start this project, everybody's gonna be like, oh, it's a small project that they want to start, but it's gonna burn out eventually. Nobody's gonna trust you on that anymore, and you need time to improve your self-image. So kind of put a stop to it and think, okay, from now on I'm gonna be a changed person, and I'm gonna try to be more consistent and stick to it. I know it's like telling a lazy person to stop being lazy. It doesn't seem like it's going to be possible overnight. It definitely isn't. Initially, you need to start seeing yourself as a successful person. Don't say that I am trying to go to the gym. See yourself as someone who regularly goes to the gym. That difference in images really makes a significant difference, because if you can see yourself as someone who does this consistently and who has the discipline to maintain it, you will act accordingly. And when eventually people start expecting that of you, you will eventually be able to hold yourself at a higher pedestal and be able to pursue the things that you thought that initially you couldn't. The second reason is you pick the wrong things. You pick hobbies or goals or lifestyles that don't suit you, they don't excite you, but you're doing it just because maybe your friends said it's cool, or maybe society says it's the right thing to do, or maybe even the way you've been brought up, it seems like the best decision. For example, if you want to start a hobby, so reading non-fiction books seems like an amazing idea because, that's what we've taught is productive, and you want to be seen as an intellectual person, but it doesn't excite you, then I don't think you're going to be consistent at it, because that's what I did. I was like, if I'm going to read, I need to be reading non-fiction books because that's what seems like a good use of my time. That's the right way I should go about it. But then what happens is I just keep on accumulating books and I never read through them. I never go through them. So do things that actually excite you. And even if they don't excite you, maybe you can do them in a way that excites you. So taking the non-fiction book example, I find it hard to actually sit and read a non-fiction book, but I don't mind listening to it. I can listen to it with focus and absorb the messages. So I really enjoy that. So maybe you can make it fun and you can choose a better goal. So in itself, you need to have a good why as to why you're picking that thing. And you need to be able to tell yourself, is the end goal worth it enough for you to be pursuing this, right? Which brings us to our third point, which is that you pick way too many things for yourself. You say yes too easily. Maybe you saw a movie and you're like, now I'm going to be doing ballet. You went to maybe an art event at your university and you're like, now I'm going to be pursuing this crocheting or clay art or whatever. And you really jump easily. And it's good to be spontaneous, but like I said, if you keep on jumping, you'll never see yourself get anywhere in even the hobbies that you love. So don't say yes so easily. Once you've said yes, see it through. So also, people do this a lot, is they just, once they decide they're going to do a hobby or start something, they waste a lot of time and investment and finances into getting all the expensive equipments for that, and then don't pursue it in the end. So they're just left with a lot of debt, or maybe just left with a lot of wasted money. So I would recommend maybe borrow or maybe use the bare minimum equipment or equipment you might actually already have, and then use that. Stick with it for a few months, and if you keep on liking it, then maybe you can start investing in a couple things to buy additionally or something like that. This brings me to my fourth point, which is stay long enough to see results. Because when we pick a hobby, we initially love seeing something new. We find it exciting and we're just like, oh my gosh, this is my passion. I love it so much. I'm enjoying this so much. But as soon as that high of feeling as soon as that high diminishes, well, I would call it the honeymoon phase. As soon as the honeymoon phase is over, we start feeling the struggles that you naturally feel when you're doing something difficult. Even if it's just a hobby, you feel like, okay, if I'm struggling here, then that means that I must not like it. But that's not true, because if you're struggling, that's just a part of the process of learning, and you need to accept that. Motivation is something that's going to bring highs and lows. That's why you need to have discipline, so it can anchor that motivation in place and you can keep on making progress. The highs that you actually see in your journey towards pursuing different goals or different hobbies is through achieving something. Like if you're trying to learn the guitar, maybe it's your first song, or if you're trying to learn a language like Korean, maybe it's the first time you introduce yourself in the subway to a random Korean person who you accidentally met, and that is going to give you a burst of motivation, and that's going to make you go on for longer. Not the hours you spent beforehand. They're just work that you have to put in, and obviously it's good to enjoy, but it's also good to recognize that it might not always be flowery and nice and amazing. And this brings me to the fourth point, which is how do you deal with flashy things syndrome? So this brings me to my fourth point, which is the flashy things syndrome. You don't stay with a thing long enough to see results because you jump. And that's what I would call a jumper, because we can't stick to the hobbies or the goals that we decide. So one thing that helped me was I list down all the things that I think, okay, I want to do all these things, all these hobbies that I want to pursue. And I give myself an ultimatum. I need to pick one of these hobbies, and I cannot change to another hobby before 2 months have passed. And I allow myself that time so that I can actually see that hobby and see how it grows. And if I don't like it, then I can change it at the end of the 2 month period. But if I do like it, I can extend that contract to myself another 2 months. It's kind of like, how you sign contracts with jobs, or celebrities sign contracts with organizations. This is a contract to yourself that I'm going to be investing my time, my effort into this hobby for 2 months before I allow myself to actually change it or decide where I want to go with this. And be realistic. You're not gonna conquer the world in that 2 month span, or you're not gonna be proficient, but with regular efforts, you will see whether you actually do like this or not. So actually make the effort to explore that hobby within that 2 months incubation period. It's kind of like a friend of mine, when we went shopping, I was like, I can't decide if I want to take this or not, if I want to buy this, or is it just a waste of money? And she was like, just hold it. I was like, what do you mean? She was like, just pick it up so that you don't feel like you're losing out on it, but then just hold it in your hand and think about it for a few minutes. And I did. And that made me realize that, it's not something that's essential. It's a waste of my money, and I could keep it back without feeling like I was losing something. So that's the same way for hobbies. Just hold a hobby for a while, hold a goal for a while, and think to yourself, is this worth the 2 months of efforts that I'm going to put into? Is this the thing that I want to be spending my time on? If it is, then go ahead with it. That seems like a good decision then. But if it isn't, then you'll be able to let it go. It's better than looking at something, making the decision instantly, right? Because it allows you the time to think. And your future self will definitely appreciate better skills and helping people and being at a better place. It's not gonna enjoy or appreciate all the seasons that you binge watched on the weekend that you don't even remember the next day, right? I've done this so many times where I just play seasons because they look cool and I don't wanna be spending my time on something else. And in the end, I don't even remember what the name was. I kind of remember the story outline, but that's about it. Instead, if I was actually working on something that I'm excited about, by the end of 2 months, I would be at a place where I can look back and be proud of that thing. And that's also true, right? Because all the stuff, all the time that you spend after your work or your university or whatever is free time. But if you're bored, then you kind of just spend that time away and you're not really making the effort to spend it in something that you actually like doing. So in the bare essence of it, it's when you're spending all that time binge watching, that's basically just a cover for boredom. You might not even want to binge watch, but you might not even want to doom scroll or binge watch seasons or whatever, but it's just like a curtain for all that boredom you have while being exhausted at the same time and unable to pursue anything else, right? But what if you peel that boredom away and you actually did something that excites you, which is your hobby? It actually gives you that energy, right? And the more you explore different hobbies, the more you learn about yourself and what you want to do. But you can only do that if you stick to something, right? So that's why I give myself the 2 month threshold, and then you can decide if you want to do something else. And that's how I started with this podcast, right? It was just like a 2 month initiative because I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to do this. And then I end up doing nothing. So I was like, okay, let me make a goal. Let me stick to it for 2 months. And I did. And I was having fun with it because we pushed through the hard parts. And now it was getting a little bit of a consistent habit. And I was like, okay, 2 months have passed. Let me try to increase it by 2 months. Let's see what happens. You can keep on improving yourself. You can keep on learning a lot of different skills, but without feeling like you're not doing anything else or you're not doing anything interesting. But how do you start forming the habits that are needed to pursue these hobbies once you've decided on what hobby or what goal you need to pursue? Well, first of all, make this hobby or make this goal accessible to you. If it involves, and I know this is such cliche advice that I cringe each time I listen to it, but it's very true. If you wanna read maybe a paper every morning, maybe have that downloaded on your tablet or your laptop or print it out and just put on your table. Or if you want to download a podcast, make a script throughout the week, and then so when the weekend rolls around, you're actually excited to get that content out and share that with people. Or if it's like playing with your cat, I do that as soon as you enter your house. Set a timer for 10 minutes and actually play with your cat. So these aren't hobbies specifically, but these are how you make habits, right? You make it accessible, you make it easy, and you schedule it into your life. You can't just be, yeah, I'm gonna do it. Try to be more specific. You can be like, I'm gonna do it on a Tuesday night at 7 p.m. If this type of strict scheduling doesn't work for you, you can also say, I'll have it done at least one time before Friday. So you could be like, I'm gonna go to the gym at least once before Friday comes around. So that way you have a bit of a loose boundary without feeling overwhelmed about it. And my last point for today is that your version of self-love might be incorrect. Because we all consider self-love to be like grabbing some ice cream or some snacks and watching a movie or just chilling around with friends. And that is self-love in some ways. But the biggest form of self-love you can have is self-discipline. Because that self-discipline is going to take you to be at a more better place in the future in terms of your mental health, your body image, your lifestyle, the skills you have, and the hobbies you're pursuing. Like, that person in the future seems like such a cool person. You'll be able to do that if you have self-discipline. So to do that, you need to understand that once the honeymoon part of the whole hobby is over, you really need to push through. And suddenly it wouldn't seem like a passion anymore, but when you finally see the results, your motivation will spark again. And I said this before, I'm going to say it again. Motivation is like a wave with its highs and lows, and discipline is what is needed to anchor that motivation and sustain it in the long run. So I'm going to end with a few strategies, because consistency is important, but you obviously also want to be spontaneous and flexible. And you want to see if this goal is still something you want to pursue over the long run, obviously keeping in mind the incubation period. So set clear goals and always have regular check-ins to evaluate both your progress and evaluate whether you still resonate with the why for that goal. So you want to allow for adjustments, but you also want to keep on checking in to see whether this is the direction that you want to go in. Also add hours of relaxation time, because hobbies are definitely fun and their end results are definitely fun, but sometimes it might be that you still like it, but you might not be as passionate. But taking a step back might let you take some time off and come back to it with renewed enthusiasm. My fourth point, for another point that I would like to highlight, is incorporate various routines. So people have this where they rotate hobbies throughout different seasons. You can also do the 2-month system, where you do a hobby for 2 months and then you are allowed to pick another one or sign yourself up for that hobby for another 2 months, right? That's a good tactic. And I know you feel like you might be missing out by not picking so many things, but it's better to be realistic and be able to achieve a few things than to be unrealistic and let all of them slip out. In the end, if you aren't able to catch any of them, it's like doing nothing at all from the start. So thank you so much for listening, and that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much, and Assalamu alaikum.